So I do a lot of relationship coaching in the workplace. Sometimes it's two managers or two vice presidents or two members of a leadership team. Sometimes it's more than two. It's an entire team. And I've been noticing a theme lately in many of the coaching engagements. And I wanted to share with you today some thoughts and tips on how to rebuild trust in a working relationship. And I'm going to ground it in an example, a case study, and I'm changing the names and genders of the clients and holding confidentiality. But I'm working with two people in organization who are both vice presidents, and they have tension and they have conflict. So one of the things that we do with relationship coaching is first send out a questionnaire to both people. I'll talk about it as if it's two people right now. It's a little different if it's a team. Send it out for each person to reflect on the questions and send back to me about not only their own personal styles and preferences and communication traits, but also looking at the relationship and what's working, what's not working, where's the relationship getting stuck, what is your vision for the ideal relationship. After both return it to me, then I send it back to the other person, and they know this in advance. And then we have the initial discovery session where we are identifying the goals of the coaching. So in one of these, I was having a pre-call. Sometimes we'll do a couple of months of coaching with each individual first before we do the coaching together. And one of the members of the relationship, I'll call him Tom. I got to write that down because that's not his name and I will forget. So Tom really wanted to rebuild trust in the relationship. It had been broken, and yet his actions were not driving in that direction. And so what do I mean by that? He wanted to hold back on some of the things in the pre-questionnaire and share them in the moment in our session, because he said, I want to see his reaction. I want to see the pop when I tell him that I don't trust him. And we worked through that. And I asked some questions and held up the mirror and just pointed out and said, if you were on the receiving end, Tom, of that in that coaching session, that something was not shared previously in the work, the pre-work, how would you feel? And he said, I'd be blindsided and I'd be caught off guard. And I said, and how would that affect the trust in the relationship? And he's like, well, certainly wouldn't build it. It wouldn't improve the trust. And yet, though, Darcy, I like results. I want urgency. And so I think we're going to get better results if I can see in the moment what his reaction is, instead of sending it in advance and giving him time to process and think about it. And so we coached around this, and we explored a couple of tenets that I want to share with you today. One is that vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And so we explored, what would it look like if Tom was able to be vulnerable and was able to share these thoughts in advance in a vulnerable way. And that was something he had to work through to realize, like, that's hard because the trust isn't there. And yet he had this realization that by not being vulnerable, he was detracting from building the trust. The other thing we explored was how to use a soft startup. And so he wanted to go in guns blazing and get that, he kept saying, the pop, the reaction. And what we looked at and what he came to the realization is that would create defensiveness, that he'd be blindsided and he'd be defensive and he would probably not react well. And so we looked at what might it look like to be authentic and vulnerable while using a soft startup and saying, so for Tom to say some version of, this is hard for me because I don't feel like there's good trust in the relationship, and I'd like there to be trust. And so I want to share openly what I'm thinking and feeling. That's a soft startup. And 96% of the time, how you start a conversation is how it ends. So if it starts harshly, it's going to end harshly. And then the third thing that we looked at and explored is like the impact of that pop and blindsiding somebody, that it actually is counterintuitive to what Tom was wanting. And he realized that that was coming from a place that he wasn't wanting to come from, that was coming from a place of lack of trust and a scarcity mentality. And he realized he didn't want to blindside him, and that was not going to contribute to the results that he wanted in the coaching. And so, I'm not going to say it was all wrapped up in a bow and wonderful. They both did the hard work in the relationship. They showed up to every coaching session and did their best to listen, to be curious, to not be defensive, and to work towards rebuilding the trust. And it was a powerful engagement. And one where at the end of the day, they had mutual respect, where they realized that they were in a spiral and it was spiraling downwards, where they were both actively sabotaging the relationship. That is the power of connecting, of being curious, of being vulnerable and using soft startups and leading from a place of good intention and not wanting to blindside someone. So I'm going to leave you with a core workout. If you are in a place where you have a relationship that isn't working, I'm going to invite you to pause and think about, how could you be more vulnerable? How could you use a soft startup in order to connect with that person and to be curious, and then act from that place of heart and intention? And if you need any insights or tips as you are working towards that, reach out to us. I'd be happy to connect with you. The coaches on my team, this is what we do, and we love what we do. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Darcy Loma, and I'm grateful that you are here with me for these Thoughtfully Fit Thursdays, where we can learn and grow together. Take care. Thank you.